I was going to talk about. There's a really good item about 2 months ago, and it was an item about a woman who would look at you, just look at you, and tell you if your aura was cracked. And then she'd charge you £680 to repair your aura. Now, that's not a consumer issue. That's a fucking idiot issue, right? If you're getting fooled by that, you don't deserve the £680, right? And my favourite thing about it was the item had a headline. The item was titled, "Bogus Psychic Scam." As if there's any other kind of psychic. As if you could have finished it with a real psychic going, well, on behalf of genuine psychics, we'd just like to say, we're very angry about this. And so are the dead. I did a television show a few years ago in Ireland called The Kelly Show, right? And on The Kelly Show that night was a woman called Sharon Neal. Sharon Neal sells herself as the blind psychic, right? And the host turned to her and said, she says, "Sharon, would you do a reading for the audience here?" And Sharon turned to the audience and says, "Has anyone here lost a Mary?" In Ireland! A forest of hands shoot up. People are always losing Marys in Ireland. Some people had lost a couple on the way to the studio that night. If you sit down too quickly in Ireland, Marys will roll out of your pocket into the gap in the couch. And even then, she kept getting stuff wrong, and the host did a brilliant thing. He turned to her and he said, there's something that nobody ever says to psychics. He goes, "Sharon, you got a lot of that wrong." And Sharon said an amazing thing. On national television, she went, "Well, sometimes there are so many voices coming through, it's difficult to know which is which." Basically, she went to the telly and went, "I'm so psychic, I'm shit at being a psychic." You know what I mean? "I'm too psychic for my own good, that's my problem," you know what I mean? That's not her laugh. Oh, I love that kind of stuff, like whatever. But all of the kind of nonsense stuff, all the fairy tales, homeopathy, chiropractic, all of this kind of stuff, like whatever, ridiculous. And they make billions every year. The wellness industry, you know. If you're not sick, you've got wellness, right? Oh, sure, we all like to talk to somebody to have a bit of a rub, but that doesn't mean you're any better or worse off after. Ridiculous stuff. Nutrition. Oh, I've spoken about this before. Here's my favorite little fact. If anyone describes us ever to you as a nutritionist, just be slightly wary, right? What they're saying may be perfectly true, but nutritionist isn't a protected term. Anyone can call themselves a nutritionist, right? Dietitian is the legally protected term, right? Dietitian is like dentist, and nutritionist is like toothologist. I mean, I could call myself a nutritionist, and I'd be a phenomenally popular nutritionist. People would come from miles around. I'd be going, "Listen, you look fantastic. Let's have a pint. Come on, let's have a pint. You fat bastard, I'll wrestle you," right? It's ridiculous, and it is just, even though there's loads of evidence for these kind of stuff, we still, on some level, would sooner believe the story that our mother tells us about a woman she knew who had a headache, and then she rubbed a cat on the side of her head, and the headache was gone the next day, right? And we'll even take some things for granted about our own health. There's a thing on the cover of the London Evening Standard. The London Evening Standard, during the year, had this thing where it said 10 symptoms you should not ignore. And you read that and you're thinking, right, this is going to be something which I've had for a while, but it's been low level and I've never done anything about it, but it hasn't gone away, and maybe I should get that checked out. That's what you presume it is, you know what I mean? And like, oh, that pain in my arm is still there. I can't seem to clear that chesty cough. The first 3 symptoms you should not ignore were rectal bleeding, loss of height, and sudden blindness. Who ignores sudden blindness? Who sits in the office at lunchtime going, "Oh, who turned out the lights? Oh, I know, I can't see a thing, it's awful, I'm no use to anyone today. Here, I'll answer phones. That's all I can do, that's all I'll be good for today. Oh, don't make a fuss, don't make a fuss, don't make a fuss." And by the way, I wouldn't dream of lecturing you on how to live your life. I wouldn't dream of lecturing you about health. That would be arrogant of me, like as arrogant as these people. Like, look at me, I'm a big guy, right? You know what I mean? Like, I'm no model for anyone when it comes to health. I winter well, as we say, euphemistically. And I know this, it gets reflected to me in weird ways. We went to buy a car during the year. Myself and the wife went to buy a car, and we're sitting in the garage, and on the garage forecourt, they had a little 2-seater sports car, and I said, "Listen, I know we're not going to buy, can I just sit in it? I've always wanted one, can I just sit in it?" She goes, "All right, you can." And I sat in the little 2-seater sports car, and I just looked and went, "How do I look?" She goes, "You look like Noddy."
tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story and then let you get on with your lives. About the comic relief thing, right? Did the comic relief thing. Was at pains to point out that at no stage was this like, oh, we were pushed to the very limits of our endurance and who knows, we could have died at any stage. Oh my God. Except we could have died at one stage. There was one day where they sent us down a section of river which was too fast. It was too high. It was just post the rains, and it was technically difficult. There are rapids that go around rocks, and there are rapids that go through trees, right? And the through trees ones are actually really dangerous because Jack D's boat, for example, got caught in it, got punctured by the trees, and he almost fell into the tree where he would have been trapped and drowned, and then they pulled him out at the last minute, right? And I was in another boat with another guy at the back, and it was our safety boat disappeared off, and we smashed into a tree. Both paddles were lost. At one stage, I am in the water of the river, pulling the boat along, because the bloke with me was a British Olympic triple jumper who couldn't fucking swim, so that was helpful. And then we found ourselves in this quiet spot, surrounded by this thrashing water, all going this one way. And we're going, they can't come back up to us. What the hell are we going to do? Right? We've got to, and we brilliantly decided, you know what? We'll just push ourselves off. We've no paddles or anything, but we'll push it and we'll get carried down to the bottom. Because, you know, it's a log flume. And at some stage, halfway down, there'll be a flash, and at the bottom, we'll be able to buy a photograph of ourselves on a mouse mat looking petrified to shit. So we go down, we hit every tree on the way down. I get thrown from the boat again. I end up having to swim over to a tree which is sticking out of the water and grab onto it, this thin tree, and hold onto it. For 40 minutes, I'm holding onto this tree as the rapids are coming past me. For 30 minutes at least of which, I am trying to think of what the funny joke I will say is when I'm rescued. Because I felt I had a professional obligation as a comedian to have like a Bruce Willis quip ready. So that I get rescued, they pull me out of the water and I go, come in number 9, your time is up. And then I thought, maybe I shouldn't do that, just in case I do that. And they immediately go, Jack D is dead. I don't know. After 40 minutes of being standing in the river, a camera boat did eventually come past, and I had to jump to it, and I got saved. And then we're all gathered on a riverbank further down in a quiet point, just getting our breath back after this ridiculous, unnecessary adventure, right? When I'm sitting talking to the sound man, he said, you were gone for an hour. You were missing. Your paddles are gone. At one stage, you have no boat for 40 minutes. Did you not panic? And I'm going, do you know what? Weirdly, I didn't panic, right? Clearly, this is a big deal. But my brain kind of went, the problem's this big, so let's just think about this. Let's just think about these 30 seconds. As long as you're alive for this bit, then it kind of doesn't matter how big the problem is, right? Let's just worry about this, and as long as you stay alive in this bit, then the rest of it doesn't matter. And your man looked at me and said, oh, that's very interesting, Dara. The way your mind works in a high-stress situation like that. The way you managed to keep a lid on panic or any of those kind of emotions during what was clearly a very dangerous time. Because there was a camera on your helmet, and I'm the sound man. Would you like to hear a recording of yourself for the last hour? And it is just an hour of me going, fuck, 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 fuck. But anyway, they took a picture of me at that point, holding on, because there's a camera, so they got a long lens shot of me doing this. And they sent the picture back to the newspapers here in the hope that people would see this and go, it's not just like a jolly, they're genuinely doing some difficult, dangerous stuff. So, you know what, we'll donate more. And that's the way it works. Good for them. They do great work, right? However, they also sent the photo of me hanging onto this tree to the newspapers in Ireland. And they ran it big. The front cover of the Irish Independent was a big picture of me clinging to this tree under the headline, "The Brits have tried to kill Dara." When will this nightmare end? My uncle in Limerick, at the other side of Ireland, my 85-year-old uncle walks into a newsagent, sees this massive stack of papers with his nephew drowning in a river in Africa, and freaks out, races home, rings his sister, my mother, my 83-year-old mother, and goes, "Oh my God, Etna, what's happened?" Now, my mother's general attitude to peril and things I do on the television is essentially, Which is to say, on some gut level, my mother never thought I went to Africa. Still probably doesn't. Thought I was in a studio in Shepherd's Bush and then computers, right? So she, liberated by this, right, when he rings going, oh my God, Ethna, what's happened? My mother, on an instinct we had never noticed before, decides to fuck with his head. My 83-year-old mother decided to prank her 85-year-old brother, you know, for mega lols. So he goes, oh my God, Ethna, what's happened? Her response genuinely was, Jesus, Frank, it's worse than you've heard. So now he is reeling, right? My sister's in the hallway going, what are you doing, right? And she's there going, and she hits him with the killer line. Now, I don't think in parts of the UK they get how great this line is. If you're Irish, oh, you get this. In Ireland, this is a line that has resonance and darkness attached. It's just, he goes, oh, and he's reeling. And my mother hits him with, we're flying out tomorrow. It literally isn't a darker thing you could say in Ireland. Centuries of immigration, bodies being returned, the tragic Kai cost of... And he is now, oh! This poor image of his 83-year-old sister being rushed to Dublin Airport, right, to get an emergency flight. They're sweeping the rabbits off the runway. Just to, come on! The plane takes off, it lands at Heathrow. She's transferred to the first flight to Africa. That takes off, it lands at Africa Airport. Gets out. Gets an internal flight from there to Zambia. Then she gets out, and then there's like a twin-prop plane that the flying doctors would use. She's bundled into this and then flown low over the Serengeti, buzzing along over the landscape till she finds a flat patch of ground near a hut, a shack, the medical centre. And this little Irish woman, 83 years old, wearing the same coat, holding the same bag that she's been traveling with for the last 36 hours, is walked through this alien landscape into this room where there's a large figure lying on a trolley. And they peel back and they say, can you identify the body? And my mother looks and goes, is that Al Murray?